The Secret in the Matchbox, Val Willis, pictures by John Shelley. The Secret in the Matchbox, Val Willis, pictures by John Shelley. Bobby Bell had a secret, and the secret was in a matchbox, and the matchbox was lying snug at the bottom of his pocket. Bobby put his hand into his pocket and curled his fingers round the matchbox. He smiled a secret smile. Bobby took his matchbox to school. "Do you want to see a secret inside my matchbox?" he asked Jenny Wood. "No, thank you," said Jenny Wood, tossing her plaits. "I don't like boys and I don't like surprises." Bobby took his matchbox into school. "Do you want to see a secret inside my matchbox?" he whispered to Peter Drew in assembly. "No, thank you," said Peter Drew, who was a good and polite little boy. During some time, Bobby took out his matchbox. "Do you want to see a secret inside my matchbox?" he whispered to little Helen Wells. "Yes, please," whispered little Helen Wells, who was a good and polite little girl. Bobby opened the matchbox and stuck it under little Helen Wells's nose. Helen Wells screamed a loud and long scream. Miss Potts, who was marking books at her desk, stood up. "Bring that matchbox to me, Bobby Bell," she said. Bobby snapped the matchbox shut and walked slowly up to Miss Potts's desk. "Do you want to see what's inside my matchbox?" he asked. "I do not," said Miss Potts. "Just leave it on my desk and get on with your sums." Bobby walked slowly back to his place. "She'll be sorry," he muttered to little Helen Wells. "She'll be sorry," he muttered to Jenny Wood. "She'll be sorry," he said, poking Peter Drew. During lunchtime, Bobby peeped through the classroom window. The matchbox was still on Miss Potts's desk, but it was open. "Oh dear," said Bobby, "there's going to be trouble." The class came in after play and sat down. Bobby hardly dared to look at Miss Potts's desk. "I knew there'd be trouble," he said to anyone who'd listen. A tiny red and green dragon sat behind a pile of books on Miss Potts's desk. Bobby could see it very clearly, but nobody else seemed to have noticed it. Bobby copied his spellings carefully off the blackboard and kept one eye on the dragon. The dragon moved nearer to Miss Potts and grew a little. Bobby held his breath. Miss Potts was hearing little Helen Wells read. Suddenly Helen screamed a loud and long scream. "What is the matter with you today, Helen?" asked Miss Potts. "Nothing," said Helen, who was a good and polite little girl. Peter Drew came out to read. The dragon had grown a little larger and was moving towards Peter Drew's reading book. Bobby held his breath. "Please, Miss Potts," said Peter Drew, who was a good and polite little boy, "I can't read my book because there's a dragon on the page." "Don't be silly, Peter," said Miss Potts. "I know there's a dragon on your page. Your book is all about dragons. Go and sit down." Suddenly there was a loud crash and a whole tin of pencils fell to the floor. Who knocked over my pencils? Asked Miss Potts. Bobby knew. The class was quiet. The dragon sat under the desk and grew a little larger. Bobby Bell, said Miss Potts, come and pick up these pencils. Bobby walked slowly out to Miss Potts's desk. He crawled under the desk and started to pick up the pencils. The dragon was now as big as a cat. It tickled Bobby's face. Bobby laughed. Don't be silly, Bobby, said Mrs. Potts. Go and sit down. The dragon was now as big as a dog. He moved to the spare seat next to Jenny Wood and sat down. The whole class held its breath. Jenny Wood saw the dragon sitting next to her. Please, Miss Potts, she said, putting up her hand and tossing her plaits. There's a dragon sitting next to me, and I don't like surprises. Get on with your work, Jenny, said Miss Potts without looking up. Jenny glared at the dragon and got on with her work. The dragon was now as big as a donkey. It moved to the back of the class. I knew there'd be trouble, said Bobby. A thin plume of smoke curled from the dragon's nostrils. The class watched and held its breath. The dragon was now as big as a cow. All the plants on the back shelf withered and died. The dragon grew still more. All the water in the fish tank turned to steam. Bobby Bell, open the window, said Miss Potts without looking up. It's hot in here. The dragon was now as big as a bear. All the plasticine on the modelling table melted. The dragon grew still more. The rubbish in the waste bin started to burn. There's a funny smell in here, said Miss Potts, looking up. Miss Potts screamed a long and loud scream. I knew there'd be trouble, said Bobby Bell, to anyone who'd listen. Miss Potts jumped onto her chair. The dragon moved nearer. Miss Potts jumped onto her desk. The dragon moved nearer still. It was now the size of an elephant. Bobby Bell! Screamed Miss Potts. Are you responsible for this dragon? Yes, Miss Potts, said Bobby, walking out to her desk. Well, don't just stand there, said Miss Potts. Do something. Bobby picked the matchbox up off the desk. I told you I had a secret, he said, walking towards the dragon. He touched the dragon and it started to shrink. When it was tiny again, he put in the matchbox and snapped the matchbox shut. The class and Miss Potts held their breath. Bobby put the matchbox back in his pocket and curled his fingers round it. He smiled a secret smile.